Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report today. It's Wednesday, February 13th, 2013, and I'm Darko. Alright, we finished off with this article, how in New York City the homeless pay $3,000 a month to live in tenements. So it says here in this population where homeless population is growing, some landlords are paying off the rent-stabilized tenants in order to overcharge the city on rentals for the homeless. Some cases, the rent ends up being as high as $3,000 a month for a tiny room without a kitchen or a bathroom. It says, yep, you read that correctly. So next time you wonder why you're paying so much for your little box in the sky, you can thank America's growing slumlord industry. So the city's Department of Homelessness Services pays many times the amount of the rooms it would usually rent for, spending over $3,000 a month for each threadbare room without a bathroom or kitchen because of an acute shortage in shelters for the homeless men and women. So it says it encouraged this individual to switch business models and become a major private operator of homeless shelters. It says a number of homeless people rising to 30-year record levels, over 47,000 people as of early this month, 20,000 of them children. Says the crisis that's causing the city to open so many new shelters is mostly of the mayor's own making. Instead of moving families out of shelters and into permanent housing, as previous mayors did, the city is now paying millions to landlords with a checkered past of harassing low-income tenants and failing to address hazardous conditions. It says here that one person said, for $3,000 I could have gotten an apartment, a down payment, and a security deposit and some furniture. 49-year-old said, the landlord is getting $3,000 and I'm getting nothing. The coming pension crisis, you can go in there and check it out, links will be posted. I'm going to keep moving. States face a $3 trillion funding gap and only about 10% of Americans are now covered by pensions. For young Americans entering the workforce, the self-funded 401k is likely the only path to having a nest egg and any sort of retirement. It says this is why so many people get angry when they hear about someone in California that retired in their early 50s pulling an annual pension of $100,000. Over the 20 to 30 years, this range can range from $2 to $3 million of payouts. It says only about 10% of private sector workers have the opportunity for a pension. This is, of course, is likely lower given the trend above. So there's a chart in there. You can go and check it out. It shows defined benefit starting back in 1980, up around 60%. Then you have these private workers who employers sponsor a plan, age 25 to 64, full-time only. Really not much change. We're still going down. Then defined contribution 401k going up as far as the percentage of workers with pension coverage. Next up, we have Caribbean islands selling citizenship. Some Caribbean islands are selling citizenship to make up for budget shortfalls. One such island, Dominica, has a new citizen who has never set foot on the black sand beaches. So it goes on here, it says that like many Palestinians, has not been recognized as a citizen of any country. It says the turmoil in the Middle East and North Africa has led to a surge of interest in programs like the one this individual is participating in. Then the European Union and the U.S. will begin formal talks on free trade agreement, paving the way for the biggest trade in history. European Commission President Barroso made the announcement following Obama's State of the Union address. A deal would bring down trading barriers between the two biggest economies in the world. EU-US trade is worth around 455 billion euros, that's almost 400 billion pounds, and $600 billion a year. Obama announced U.S. support for talks as part of his annual address to Congress on Tuesday, saying the free trade deal would boost American exports, support American jobs, and level the playing field in the growing markets of Asia. Then you have protectionist pressures. The idea was discussed following the formation of the working group in 2011. So it goes on here and said the deal would focus on bringing down remaining tariffs and other barriers to trade and standardize technical regulations, standards, and certifications. Free trade between U.S. and EU has been under informal discussion for years. That's, behind closed doors and stuff like that. Now it's just coming out, right? That's how it all starts. Behind closed doors, private think tanks. And it says here, previously politicians have been discouraged from pursuing free trade deals for fear of exposing domestic industries to greater competition from abroad. So the people from at the top, they're going to benefit from this. And, they're going to lobby with billions of dollars and stuff to push these policies have been written in privacy from people that have a lot of money. So I mean, if you're just an average dude or a union worker, how the hell are you going to fight this? You're not. I'd say it'll be good news for economic growth in the EU. On the American side, the critical factor is that Obama is now in his second term, so he doesn't have the protectionist pressures in the U.S. businesses to worry about. Then Revolving Door at Security Exchange Commission, and a Whirl is hundreds hired by industry they regulated, so this is not a big surprise. Charged with regulating Wall Street, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has become a launching pad for former agency employees by the hundreds to become part of the industry they once oversaw. A new report says that more than 400 ex-SEC staffers were working for the industry between 2001 and 2010. They also found numerous concerns with revolving doors between the SEC and financial firms. Says these included agency workers trying to help corporations influence agency regulations, defending companies suspected of breaking the law, and helping them avoid tougher enforcement actions. So Putin bans Russian officials from having foreign bank accounts and stock. He submitted a bill that would ban Russian cabinet members and other senior officials from having foreign bank accounts and owning foreign stock, the Kremlin said. It applies to officials' wives and underage children. It's aimed at ensuring national security, establishing order in lobbyist activities, and increasing investment in the national economy, and raising efficiency of anti-corruption efforts. So we were just talking about this, the European Union, U.S. making this big trade agreement, transatlantic possibly, and we have what? One of the things with the World Trade Organization and these trade agreements is it binds countries together where they'll be forced to trade these products, and they could be harming their people. You know, like ractopamine in the beef, U.S. beef, and the Russians don't want it. And they said to take it out, and they kept receiving it with the same stuff in there, and they were failing the test with this drug or whatever in it. And now, what does the U.S. do? U.S. demands Russia immediately lift the meat ban. The U.S. has urged Russia to honor its obligations as a WTO member and restore market access for U.S. meat and meat products immediately. Earlier, the Russian food watchdog claimed the ban over additive ractopamine will be long-term. They said the U.S. is very disappointed that Russia has taken action to suspend all imports of U.S. meat and protect their people, unlike our country, which is produced to the highest safety standards in the world. Yeah, like in the EU and that, where they got freaking horse meat in there and pink slime and McDonald's food and stuff, and what is it? In Taco Bell, they had that kind of fake beef. Russia's ban on imports of U.S. meat products over the feed additive ractopamine went into effect on Monday. They were concerned about the use of the growth stimulant used in U.S. and other countries to make beef, pork, and poultry products. In July, UN food safety body, the Codex Alimentarius Commission, said the additive has no impact on human health. Also, Russia enacted similar requirements for producers in Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. The meat industry now consumes four-fifths of all antibiotics. Isn't that crazy? It goes on here and it says that the Pew Charitable Trust crunched the agency's numbers on antibiotic use on livestock farms and compared them to data on human use of antibiotics to treat illnesses. So it goes on there and says that while human antibiotic use has leveled off at below 8 billion pounds annually, livestock farms have been sucking in more and more of these antibiotic drugs each year, and consumption reached a record nearly 29 billion pounds in 2011. So here you go, millions of pounds sold in this little chart, and this was back in 2001 at about 22 million pounds. So, and then here's the sick people. So, you know, it's about factory farming and trying to basically make the most with putting out the least amount of product and resources, using up the least amount of resources. And it's the same thing with labor, right? Because labor is a resource. That's your time, and you know you can't produce time with a machine or something like that. Maybe down the road, but until then, you know, time is very valuable, and so they want people's time, and they want them to be able to commit to giving up their time for less in return, and that's what's happening after this wealth consolidation operation. As far as bringing jobs back to America, they want cheap labor. They want to exploit people. They want to set up these laws and international agreements, trade agreements, in order to protect big international corporations from actual grassroots lobbyist groups, people that are trying to protect their protect their livelihoods. More hospital deaths to be investigated. 9 more hospital trusts are being investigated over the mortality rates, says the NHS Commissioning Board. Said the 9 trusts have stood out on the hospital standardized mortality ratio for 2 years in a row. Said the 5 trusts to be probed were identified as having higher than expected death rates. So they're talking about unsafe conditions and stuff like that and regulations, but really this is a success. So, you know, I mean, that's how you have to look at some things. I mean, this is a success, right? There's going to be 20 million workers that aren't going to be needed by 2020, so it's just like, well, they got to go. They're useless eaters. Well, they'll die, and that's what this death care is all about. All right, then we have blind pensioner, 97, jumped into harbor and drowned soon after doctors told him he had cancer because he didn't want to be a burden. So it goes on here, it says a blind man didn't want to lose his independence. The former sailor was still able to cycle to the supermarket until 3 months ago, had spent 6 weeks in the hospital and was agitated after he left. So it goes on here, it says determined not to be a burden on his family, jumped into a harbor and drowned shortly after learning that he had cancer. The second New York hospital warns nearly 2,000 patients of possible HIV infection from insulin pens. I think I covered this before, but for whatever it's worth, it says a hospital in New York has notified 1,900 patients that they may have been exposed to HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C days after another hospital in New York admitted making the same mistake through reusing insulin pens used by diabetics. So I guess that's good for the eugenicists who know about 20 million workers that aren't going to be needed. Connecticut wants behavioral health assessment of public school children and homeschoolers. So it says here that this bill 374, co-sponsored by state senator, would require all homeschooled children at the ages of 12, 14, 17 to undergo behavioral health assessment. The bill not only attacks the parental rights of homeschooled children, it also mandates that all children, even those enrolled in public school at grades 6, 8, 10, 12, be given the same type of behavioral health evaluation. Each healthcare provider would be required to complete a form supplied by the State Board of Education verifying that the child has received the assessment. It says also the chances of these children being diagnosed with something is very high. With so many normal behaviors now being considered mental illness, including creativity, it says it is indeed very likely that any expert conducting the behavioral health assessment will find plenty of concerning aspects of a child's behavior, and of course, they'll put them on some kind of pharmaceutical drugs. It's funny because in Brave New World, you think it's going to be like everyone's going to be all drugged up and happy. You think it's going to be voluntary, right? And it kind of is, but it's going to be coercive too. And it's going to be forceful through state regulations and that. But another thing is what? It kind of ties in with like 1984, is to dumb them down, right? 23% of America, and even in Brave New World, as far as like genetically creating people in labs and stuff like that. And just making them just useful, to do this job or to do that job, you know what I mean? A certain amount of intelligence, and that's it, nothing more. 23% of America is illiterate. 1 in 5 Americans lacks the basic skills beyond a 4th grade level. They say the most illiterate city is Washington, D.C. The least literate city is Bakersfield, California. Although I think this is kind of like, I would take too much to heart with this article or whatever it was, because it's promoted by colleges and stuff like that, saying that individuals who voted in the past 5 years, level 1, 55%, so level 5, 89%. So if you're smarter, you believe in democracy, the farce of democracy. And it goes in there and talks about people in poor countries and stuff like that. How basically you can't have families, right? Because if you can't keep up in the Brave New World, then what? Then you can't have a family. So it can lead to a generation of illiterate families. It's actually kind of making me more sick to read this. There's also a clear correlation between a person's literacy level and weekly earnings, right? Because we're not rated off personality, how good people are. We're rated on our money. What do you do? How much do you make? That's why a lot of women, that's how they look at men, as like financial, monetary assets. I didn't plan this, but I think I'm just going to bust into 4 videos today, so I'll just leave off here. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.